Welcome. Is your digital identity safe? To start off our conversation today, I'd like to ask you a question. Who would you trust with your personal information? How about this guy? Or maybe this girl? Or perhaps one of these two business people? Or even this elderly couple? While many of you may answer no, you wouldn't trust any of them with your personal information, the fact is that some of them may already have it. In an increasingly digital age, more and more people are taking to the internet for many of their daily activities, and this has led to a new form of data collection that can be used for both legal and illegal means. Let's think of it this way. How many of you still carry around large amounts of cash in your wallets on a daily basis as opposed to the more simplistic method of carrying around a credit or bank card? The question is very similar to that of asking when was the last time you wrote a person a physical letter as opposed to an email or sent a text message. The evidence clearly shows that our society is becoming increasingly more dependent on digital e-commerce. According to an article written by Donna Hoffman, Thomas Novak, and Marcus Peralta, U.S. consumers conducted over $37.5 billion in online purchasing in 2002 alone, and it has only gotten larger since then. While many of us rely on digital means to conduct our lives, the fact of the matter is data is collected and utilized for various reasons. Later we will look at some of these legal means and illegal uses for this data. The more troubling fact is that while this data is supposed to be secure, data breaches can and do happen. People can get a hold of your personal information, and sometimes those reasons are for malice intent. Some of the more recent data breaches we may recognize happened at companies such as Target or Home Depot. Target had what was arguably one of the largest and most impactful data breaches that we know of. Many consumers were impacted by this data breach, and credit or bank card numbers were compromised. So what are people attempting to do with this information? Do you know if your numbers were one of the ones compromised? How would you find out? And what could be done about it? These are questions many consumers faced after the news of the data breaches came out. This brings us to our main focus today, and that is identity theft. So what is identity theft? Identity theft could include such things as stealing your credit card information, taking your personal information with the intent to defraud, using your medical data in order to defraud, or attempting to steal your digital identity. In 2012, Microsoft Corporation expanded their definition of identity theft to include any kind of fraud that results in the loss of personal data such as passwords, usernames, banking information, or credit card numbers. In an article written for the Journal of Economic Perspectives by Keith Anderson, Eric Durbin, and Michael Salinger, the authors point out how identity theft is being made more possible by the rise of use of modern payment systems, specifically in a more digital modern economy. According to their research, in 2005, 3.7% of the population, or 8.3 million people, had reported being the victim of some form of identity theft. In another article written by William Roberts and Stacy Schreft for the Journal of Monetary Economics in 2006, over $49.3 billion was stolen through identity theft and cost consumers more than $61 billion. So this raises an alarming question. Can you prevent identity theft? In order to answer this question, we have to look at some other factors involved. How is your data being collected? What is it being used for, and who might be gathering it? And what can you do to decrease the odds of your identity, either digitally or physical form, from being compromised? Many of the points made earlier probably have you asking the question, how safe is my information online? I'm sure many of us have thought about this question at some point or another. With an increasingly digital e-commerce society, more and more of our transactions are taking place online. In an article written by Syed Akhtar from Marquette University, data shows that most consumers have a different outlook on their digital activities in that they do not perceive the act of conducting online transactions to be the same level as perhaps sending an email or other internet-related activities. Consumers feel as though the concept of identity theft only needs to be looked at when using internet technologies to conduct those online transactions. However, this is not the case. Much of our personal information can be data mined or collected for legitimate uses. Many of those are geared towards direct marketing strategies. How often have you logged on to Facebook or into a search engine on the internet only to see ads or banners that seem to have relevance to something you may have looked at or searched for previously? This is an example of data mining being used to create specific one-to-one marketing strategies. This is a legal and increasingly larger practice. In an article written by Chris Clifton and Don Marks in 1996 for a data mining comparison, the authors point out the fact that data mining can be used to identify specific information about an individual or trends that can be used for pointed marketing strategies. Let's face it, we are more inclined to look at a sales ad or read a brochure if we know it will contain information relevant to our likes or needs. However, there are many illegal uses for your information as well. This chart depicts some of the more popular forms of identity theft. Also in the research from Anderson, Durbin, and Salinger, credit cards accounted for 2.9% of identity theft claims. The total of identity theft claims that were reported at that time was only 3.7% total. That means credit card theft is the largest area being targeted by identity thieves, and for good reason. It stands to give them the most monetary gain in the shortest amount of time. Many people think to themselves, I am careful online and this could not happen to me. Well, let's take a look at some demographic research on who is being impacted by identity theft. As we can see by survey results from the Federal Trade Commission, in 2013, identity theft has a large demographic impact. More so on the 20 to 29 age bracket, but really does not have a significant reduction until age 60. This is a large area of the population that is being impacted by identity thieves, and many of us are probably part of this demographic. After seeing the primary age brackets impacted by identity theft, I wanted to see if there was any correlation with those results and that of internet usage. Keith Anderson published his research in the Journal of Public Policy and Marketing addressing some of these very items. In his research, he was able to prove that households that have more online transactions have a greater risk of identity theft than opposed to those that do not. Households with more children are more likely to experience identity theft due to this increase of online transactions, as well as homes that have adults with higher education that are more predisposed to having additional credit cards. He also further solidified the age demographic of 25 to 34-year-olds being more impacted by identity theft. In this chart provided by the online source eMarketer.com, we can see the drastic increase of online usage through multiple devices. As this increase has occurred, we have also seen an increase in identity theft. In a research study conducted by Dr. Zachariah Salih, he discovered the upward trend of identity theft as correlated to increase of online use transactions. His findings show in 2009, identity theft ranked at 8.2% of all crimes reported in the United States, while in 2011, that number jumped to 21.7%. If we correlate that with the chart showing time spent online, we can see similar increase in online usage. Another interesting fact Dr. Salih discovered was that in 2011, 1,125,634 people reported being the victim of some form of identity theft. Let's take a second to reflect on our own lives. Has living in an e-commerce society changed how you interact with the online environment? How many of us conduct purchases through online portals? It may be for the ease of use, the speed, or convenience, but many of us are beginning to transition more to the online world to conduct our day-to-day businesses or purchases. Many of us use online resources such as Amazon or eBay, for example, to purchase items. We may also use the online portals from many popular retailers. How many of us prefer to go Black Friday shopping in the stores, and how many of us would rather wait to do Cyber Monday shopping from the convenience of our homes? These are answers that are all individually based. However, the end result is the same. We expose our personal information, more often a credit card, to purchase an item, but also provide personal information such as addresses, phone numbers, shipping addresses, billing addresses, and things of that such to have items purchased and shipped to us. However, this is where the identity thief may be lurking. According to Anderson, Durbin, and Salinger, identity theft happens when enough data about an individual is acquired to counterfeit the link, allowing a thief to replicate one's identity and use the information to purchase or defraud. This chart from USA Statistics shows that a steep incline of online transactions from 2012 through projected 2018. More and more users will be using online technologies to make purchases or conduct those online transactions. So what are identity thieves actually doing with the information they steal? Claire Sullivan presented her research in an article for the International Review of Law, Computers and Technology, addressing this very question. In her conclusion, she identifies the act of identity theft to that of someone using another identity to commit fraud, thereby infringing on the person's rights and causing them harm. I found it to be very interesting that her definition is actually part of the law that is written in the UK for prosecuting identity theft. Identity thieves can use your information for multiple items. One of the largest that we have seen in the previous slides is that of credit card theft. In this modern age, thieves do not actually have to physically get a hold of our cards anymore. All they need is the numbers and some accompanying information. Information that we routinely may use in an online transaction, such as those billing addresses, shipping addresses, phone numbers, and things of that nature. Take, for example, the new tool from Apple, their Apple Pay app. This allows users to input their information into their mobile devices and use them as a credit card. How easy would it be for a thief to get that information and clone your credit card through this type of device? While researching for case studies of actual identity theft, I found out I actually was the victim of identity theft. I had received a call from my bank informing me of some weird transactions that were beginning to happen on my credit card. What great timing for this project. This gave me a first-hand experience with the identity theft process. In many of the phone calls and conversations that followed, I asked a representative from the bank's fraud department how this could have actually happened. And I felt it relevant, so I included their quote on this slide. The number of ways a thief can steal your credit card information is mind-boggling and doesn't always have to be by getting a hold of your physical card. That quote was directly from one of the fraud representatives from their credit card department. I also found out from the banking institution that many times these numbers are stolen, but the thieves will not use them for a long period of time, and many times when they do use them, they conduct multiple smaller transactions over a period of time as to not raise suspicion by the card owner and make it harder to track their activities. So you think that you may have been, or know you have been, the victim of identity theft. Now what do you do? First, you can use online resources such as those on this slide to determine if you are in fact a victim. Each person is allowed one free copy of his or her credit report per calendar year from each of the 3 main credit reporting bureaus. This is a valuable tool for identifying fraudulent uses of your information and gives the opportunity to act. An article published in Nursing Magazine points out 4 main items a person should do in the event of identity theft. First is to contact the fraud department of any of the 3 consumer reporting agencies listed here. Second is to close any accounts that you feel may have been tampered with or impacted. Third is to file a police report with your local police department or the policing agency where the theft occurred. And fourth is to file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission that will allow them to track the theft and make it easier for them to track and identify identity thieves. Now we know what can be done after the theft. How can we prevent it from happening? An article written by Daniel Hoffman, Thomas Novak, and Marcus Peralta examined this topic and found that in many cases, merchants need to win the confidence of consumers in order to gain their trust in an online transaction environment. Their study found that 95% of the time, a user declined to enter their personal information into any website they felt was not trustworthy. One of the ways merchants can win that trust is by ensuring that they are using secure connections for online transactions or anything that would require the transmission of personal information. As a consumer, we can learn to identify these secure connections by understanding the difference between an HTTP or HTTPS connection. Watching for the HTTPS connection whenever we transmit our data is one way to ensure a secure connection has been established with the vendor and will reduce the chances of identity theft. The bottom line is if you do not trust the site, do not transmit your information. Review the strength of your passwords you use to protect your digital identity. Create passwords that are at least 8 to 10 digits long and contain a combination of letters, numbers, symbols, upper and lowercase letters, and try to create passwords that are not easily guessable by a stranger that could get some of your basic information. For example, do not use phone numbers or addresses for your passwords. Some consumers rely on online watchdog services such as these to help protect their identities. Many of these services come with a fee, but also offer guarantees of their success with a monetary backing to help resolve any identity theft conflicts. They monitor your accounts as well as exposure of personal information and data on the web to attempt to catch or prevent any identity theft practices. You can also take an active role in monitoring your identity. Using the credit reports we discussed earlier, you can monitor for any fraudulent activity Being allowed one per year from each site could allow you to check once every 4 months to possibly intervene on any fraudulent activity. You can also check with your financial institutions to see if they have any fraud monitoring policies. In the case of my theft, I was notified within 24 hours by my institution that my card had been compromised and the account was shut down for me to limit the damage that could potentially occur. Also check with your institution as to what your liability may be for such incidents. Will you be held liable for any monies spent by the thief, or will they be covered up to a point by your financial institution? If you suspect any fraudulent activity, the best thing you can do is to report it immediately. The sooner you act, the less impact it may have. We are going to continue to grow as a society with our online environment. However, this does not mean that everyone will become a victim of identity theft. It does mean, however, that consumers do need to be diligent in their use of personal information in order to prevent it from being compromised. Through some of the actions we have discussed, a consumer can help protect their identity and help deal with the implications of a theft. It goes back to our original question. Who would you trust with your personal information? And now let's make sure that only those people you trust actually have it. Thank you.